So welcome everyone. We're going to spend about a half an hour or so kind of going through completing a 1041 for estates and trusts utilizing the CrossLink desktop product offering. So let's go ahead and kind of go how the day will look or the agenda for this particular call. First of all, I do want to start with an overview of what CrossLink Business includes. 1041 is the topic for today, but I do want to kind of visit what the different kinds of returns we can do within our business package are. Then after that, a true introduction to Form 1041, which is for federal tax return in the state for estates and trusts. I want to talk about the components of Form 1041. We'll actually even look at a PDF of the 1041 that the government issues. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about basic throughput of Form 1041. In other words, utilizing the CrossLink program, the easiest way to get from top to bottom when doing a 1041 return. Now, we'll start with, again, an overview of CrossLink Business. And when we talk about CrossLink Business, the first thing you need to know is it prepares the ability to complete the following types of federal returns. We introduced this product 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago now, and we were so excited about the idea that it sits on the same platform as our desktop products for 1040. And so with that, these are the different things that it can take care of. The 1065, which is an information return pertaining to partnership income. The 1120, which is for corporate income tax returns, 1120S, which is for S Corps. On top of that, the 990, which is a return for federally tax-exempt organizations. And then, of course, the 1041, which is the one we're going to delve into for today. But before we get into the 1041, just some things to note about all of our the different types of business returns. They're all accessible from the Business Returns tab in the CrossLink program. And on top of that, if you don't have access to Business Returns tab, you need to contact your CrossLink account or sales manager. And that simply means that, for some reason or another, either it hasn't been purchased or there might be some kind of issue which they'll be able to help you out with. CrossLink Business uses the same methodology as CrossLink 1040. So my hope is that most of you have looked at or worked in the 1040 program as well. And one of the exciting things is the way that we mirrored it, so that we could work with the same types of methodologies that we utilize within the 1040 program can be used when doing these different types of business returns. What do I mean by that? First of all, there's a business return summary, and that's in lieu of the work in progress summary. So it's your landing page and gives you the state of your business returns at any given time. There's an attached forms, which includes client data, document archive, all the forms that have been added, and the refund amount or the amount owing. Exactly the same as you'll find in our desktop product for 1040. You can also access the actual form itself, whether it be the 1065, the 1041, etc., any one of the 5 that we have from the attached forms. So when you're in the attached forms, and in fact, we're going to talk about this when we get into throughput, one of the things that you're going to see is that it's important to be able to go right to the 1041 to fill out particular fields in that particular return. CrossLink Business, when it uses the same methodologies, other things to keep in mind, the active window. And the active window is what's found down at the bottom. And we always like to say, hey, if you don't know, all you have to do is look below, and it's going to tell you exactly what's required in any field that you're in. And of course, the active window also includes icons for choices, worksheets, and form links. Exactly the same as what you would find in our desktop 1040 product. Now, it's a forms-based product. There's one difference, and that is that last year we introduced an interview mode, or what we call return interview, in our 1040 product. However, it is completely forms-based when we talk about business returns. So we do not have an interview mode at this particular time. So you'll always be adding the forms. You'll be doing your client data. You'll be going into the 1041 itself. And on top of that, one of the things you're going to be doing is you're going to be adding the forms that you want. It is your responsibility as the tax professional to begin to understand exactly what forms need to be added to a business return. On top of that, financial data importing is available. So if you have QuickBooks or Xero or any of those types of things, that is a capability that can be found within our business package. And you go under the return tab and you'll see financial data importing capabilities. And when in a moment, what we'll do is we will actually go into the program itself, into the business program, and I can show you where you can find that. Also of note is that paperless office features and text messaging are all integrated. The exact same things that you find in our 1040 program are going to be available in our business packages as well. So before we get into the 1041, one of the things I want to do is just quickly pop into our business returns themselves. One of the things you'll notice right away is, again, in lieu of the work in progress summary, the first thing you'll see is a business return summary. And of course, you can go ahead and you can select your returns. And as you select returns, you're going to be able to see that here are 990s, 1041s, 1065s, 1120s, and all of the different ones that we just made reference to. And if I were to go into something like a 1065, or yeah, in this case, I'll just choose a 1065. If at any particular time I wanted to import data, I would simply go to my return, and in there, you'll see import financial data capabilities are available. Okay? So at a very high level, just wanted to introduce all the different kinds of returns that are available through our business package. Again, 990, 1041, which is what we're going to be making reference to today, 1065 partnerships, 1120s, and 1120s are all available through our business package. Okay? Now at this time, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my business return summary, and we'll begin talking about the 1041 itself. So an introduction to Form 1041. Before we start, I think it's really important for everyone to understand a disclaimer, and that this webcast will not delve into tax theory. So again, I'm going to be showcasing the different places where you can put things in the 1041 form itself when you're doing a return. So we'll focus on the navigation of CrossLink Business software when completing returns for estates and trusts. But if you want instructions or tax theory pertaining specifically to completing the 1041, the very first place we'll want to point you to is the IRS government website. And of course, when you do that, you can go to irs.gov and go to Forms and Instructions. And in the search field, you can put Form 1041. And when doing so, you're going to get instructions for completing a 1041. And there's a lot of additional information that can be found there as well. So when we talk about a 1041, the first thing we have to ask is, what is it? It's the U.S. income tax return for estates and trusts. It's that simple. And you know what? A trust or a decedent's estate is a separate legal entity for federal tax purposes. So it is considered an entity amongst itself, not an individual like a 1040 or a corporation. It is considered its own entity, and it does have one major distinction between an individual return, a 1040, and a 1041. And that is that a trust or a decedent's estate is allowed an income distribution deduction for distributions to its beneficiaries. To figure out this deduction, the fiduciary completes Schedule B, which is found in the body of the in the Form 1041. And the reason why I bring this up is in a moment, we'll actually show you the different components of the 1041, and sure enough, you'll find that the Schedule B can be found right in the middle of it. Top of that, who files it? Who files a 1041? Well, the fiduciary of a domestic decedent's estate, trust, or bankruptcy estate files the Form 1041 to report any of the following: the income, deductions, gains, losses, etc. of the estate or trust, the income that is either accumulated or held for future distribution or is distributed currently to its beneficiaries, any income tax liability of the estate or trust, employment taxes on wages paid to household employees. Now, I got this directly from that same government website that we talked about, so it is important to understand simply who is the one that files these types of things. The fiduciary is going to be the one that's filing, and of course, you'll be working with the fiduciary as the professional tax preparer. When must it be filed? When do these have to be filed? Well, it's kind of very similar to the 1040 in one regard. If it's following a calendar year for the estate or trust, the Form 1041 and any correlating K1s, which by the way, there is a responsibility that they get sent to the beneficiaries by the tax professional or the fiduciary. Of course, the fiduciary is working with you folks. They have to be the same filing deadlines as the individual tax returns, the 1040s. So in other words, as an example, it's usually April 15th. However, if there's a holiday or it follows on a weekend, it may be April 17th, 18th, whatever it might be, but it's going to follow that same calendar schedule. Now, for fiscal year estates and trusts, the Form 1041 and any correlating K1s has to be filed by the 15th day of the fourth month following the close of the tax year. And as I said before, one of the responsibilities of the fiduciary, which means that you, as the professional working with that fiduciary, has a responsibility to send a copy of a K1 specific to each beneficiary, has to be sent to that beneficiary. So in other words, it doesn't have to be done by the end of the first month of the year or anything, but by the time you get to that filing date, a K1 has to have been sent out to the beneficiaries as well, to each one of the beneficiaries. Okay? Next up, I literally want to talk about the components of the 1041. And so we're talking about the actual form itself. We're going to kind of look at it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to compare it to what it looks like within our program itself. So the Form 1041 does consist of the following sections. First of all, there's an administrative information section. That's right at the top, and it's going to include the information on the estate or trust, the fiduciary's responsibility, and the number of K1 schedules that are going to be included. It's going to include income-related information pertaining to the estate or trust, as well as deduction-related information pertaining to the same estate or trust. It will include tax and payments-related information, and an area for the signature lines for the fiduciary and paid preparer. So that's all going to be found on the first page of the 1041. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. And you'll notice right here at the top, here's the 1041. It will start with the administrative information. And when you're in our program, we actually make reference to this as being the client data. Just like when you see that same type of thing in the 1040, we use the term client data. Here will be the income lines that will need to be your responsibility to fill out, the deductions, the tax and total payments, and of course, where the signatures will take place for both the fiduciary as well as for yourself as the tax professional. Additionally, the 1041 includes the following to facilitate accurate and complete calculations. You'll actually see this on what's known as page 2, and on page 2, you're going to find a Schedule A section for charitable deductions, Schedule B for income distribution deductions. You're going to find a Schedule G for tax computation, and another area called Other Information. It's simply to gather the rest of the needed information to complete and accurate calculations for this particular type of return. Again, going back to the 1041 itself, you'll notice that this is all found on page 2. Your Schedule A, your Schedule B, your Schedule G, as well as other information. Now, CrossLink 1041 actually provides worksheets to assist in determining these things. The deductions, which will populate associated fields in the 1041, as well as distribution. So at this particular time, one of the things I can show you very quickly is that going into the program itself, if I were to go ahead and open up a 1041, which we have here, hold on just a moment, choose any one of these. But you'll notice that over on our attached forms list, which is what we were talking about before, how it mirrors what our 1040 program looks like. But over here, you'll see both the deduction worksheet that's available to you, as well as the distribution worksheet. And what we're going to do is when we get to the point where we're talking about throughput, it is important that you determine the income and the deductions on this, but then after that, use these worksheets to see where they want to be distributed or where the deductions need to take place. Other forms that are commonly associated with filing a 1041. First of all, there will be an 8879, and that's for the IRS e-file signature authorization for the Form 1041. Of course, we see the 8879 all the time, and the 1040 is actually referred to as the 8879F when doing a 1041 return. And if we go ahead and we take a look at the program again, you'll notice right here on the attached forms, you will see the 8879 e-file authorization form. On top of that, there's a Schedule D for capital gains and losses. And again, these are the most commonly forms that you're going to add to your particular 1041 when you're doing it. You'll use this schedule to report gains and losses from the sale or exchange of capital assets by the state or trust, and it's to be carried to line 4 on the 1041. So what I'm talking about is, and we'll show you in just a moment, literally when you complete the Schedule D, that information will then populate on line 4 of the actual 1041. There's a Schedule I for alternative minimum tax for estates and trusts, and you'll complete part 3 of the distribution worksheet for assistance in this particular area. Again, you remember I told you about there is a deduction worksheet and a distribution worksheet. On the distribution worksheet, you'll see a part 3, which will pertain specifically to the alternative minimum tax. Now, there are less common forms, of course. There are all kinds of different forms that can be attached, but we have things that are such as a Schedule J or a Form 4136. Just like you would find in our regular 1040 program, the next thing that you're going to want to note is that you're going to find any one of these, which we'll showcase in just a moment, simply by adding a form or adding the form function key. Okay? So with that, it's time to begin talking about true basic throughput, excuse me. So how is it that you work through the 1041 utilizing our software? The first thing to note is after establishing their term by entering and confirming an EIN, all trusts have to have an EIN. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut back to the program itself, and if I were in the work in progress, or what we call literally when the business side of things is the business return summary. And of course, at that point, if I want to add new, it's going to ask me for my employer identification number. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and put one in. Oops. Let's do this. Now you'll notice at this particular time, I also have to hit the 1041 so that we know that we're doing in a state of trust. And what that will do is it will literally populate a brand new 1041 using that EIN, which you see right up at the top. And of course, what we were talking about before, all the things that we would mention and how it truly mirrors our 1040 product. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the attached forms, and it's going to include the return, the 1041 itself, the two worksheets I made reference to, a blank K1, as well as an 8879 for e-file authorization. I also said before that down at the bottom, if you had trouble with a particular area, as an example, the estate or trust name, you didn't understand what that meant, you can always look below. And so in this particular case, it says it needs the entity name, and that you also see icons for choices, worksheet, and formats, all the things we talked about before. We also talked about how you add forms, and when you add forms, these are all the different federal forms that are associated with doing a 1041. And just like in our 1040 product, a very nice feature is if you don't know the actual number of the form or schedule, but you do have an idea of what it's called, you of course can utilize our index. And our index will do this alphabetized, and you can look for the things that you are trying to find. So going back, whatever next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go into a return, a 1041, in which we filled out much of the information, and we'll go back to the points that we're trying to get across here. So after establishing return by entering and confirming the EIN, the next logical thing you're going to do is start by completing the client data. Just like, and what we referred to that, and when we were talking about the 1041, as in the form that's published by the IRS, that's simply the administrative information that's found at the top. And of course, you'll have a responsibility to put the estate or trust name, the fiduciary information, whether or not text messaging is okay, which is going to be an important piece if you do want to send text messages to the fiduciary, with any kind of follow-up questions. Address information, estate or trust information, banking information, prepare information, client referral, which is completely optional, as well as e-file security information. So let's pop into the program itself and take a look at this. So when we are in the client data, which is where we are right now, here, of course, was the basic administrative information. Again, let me point out the importance of text messaging. If you want to stay in contact with the fiduciary by way of text messaging, this has to be selected along with the represented phone number has to be the cell number, and you have to establish who the carrier is going to be. When that becomes the case, of course, if you wanted to send a text message to this particular individual, you could do so. Okay? The address information of the actual estate or trust, the return options, prepare information, client referral, which of course is completely optional, and then finally we finish up with e-file security information. These are the different things that have to be completed as far as the client data is concerned. After you've completed the client data, next up is you'll want to add the income deductions into the Form 1041 using the appropriate worksheets and or form links. So this is where it kind of varies. Normally when you're doing a regular type of return, the next area that you would do is you would add things like W-2s. In this particular instance, it's your responsibility as the tax professional to determine what the income and deductions are that are associated with this. So let's go back into the return itself, and you'll notice that at this time, the best way or the easiest way for throughput on this is to actually go to the 1041, and at that particular point, you'll begin filling out information pertaining to income as well as deductions. And of course, make sure that whatever you're doing, you utilize the form links and worksheets that are associated with these areas. This will help you complete the information that's required as far as what kind of income was made by the estate or trust, as well as what the deductions are. After that, what you want to do is add any appropriate forms, schedules needed to capture other credits, deductions, or relevant information pertaining to the estate or trust. And one of the things that we were talking about before is that you have a complete list of the different forms that you can add. So as an example, if there was a rental property, you need to add a Schedule E or whatever it might be, all that's available by simply going up to the Add Forms piece. So you start with the income, any basic deductions, and then any additional forms, which again delves into the tax theory piece of this whole thing, but you are going to be adding those forms, and then that will give a complete picture of the state of the estate, if you will, or trust. Okay. After that, you're going to complete and review the deductions worksheet, and what's found in the deductions worksheet is the determination of direct and indirect deductions, the application of deductions against income by type, and deductions to be directly apportioned. And take a look at this. You should also complete the distribution worksheet, which will complete these different parts. And we talked about part 3 a little bit earlier when we were talking about alternative minimum tax items that you might want to consider. Let's go back into the return itself, and you'll notice that even after we finish the income and the deductions pieces to this whole thing, it is important that you utilize the deductions worksheet to see if there's any difference as far as direct and indirect deductions allocations and where you want those things allocated, as well as distribution worksheet. And those are both things that even if you literally aren't going to be making any changes, it's a good place to do a review of the things that have been input into the return itself. Now you can add and complete the separate K1s for each one of the beneficiaries. Please remember that as you add the K1s, there's going to be administrative information that has to be entered, the worksheet for beneficiaries' share of distributable income, a part 1, a part 2, and a part 3, which we're going to all look at right here. It's very straightforward and can be found under the K1, and you add as many K1s as you want, as many as there are beneficiaries for a particular trust or state. So going back into the return itself, one of the things you'll notice is that we can go to a K1. And in the K1, the very first thing you're going to see on top is if you need to email or would like to email a copy of the K1 to the beneficiary, you can do so by checking this box and providing the email address. Now, a quick follow-up note on this is if you do choose this approach towards getting because again, as the fiduciary, and more specifically you working with the fiduciary as the tax professional, if you want to send a K1 and do so by email, one of the things you can do is you can check here, but then you'll want to utilize your K1 manager. And when you utilize your K1 manager, you'll go ahead and select the individual. You will have to have your text messaging set up with your Gmail account. But once that is done, you will go ahead and select the individual, and then you can go ahead and email. That will send the email literally to the beneficiary, and it will be encrypted. So it doesn't get any better than that. So again, in the beneficiary information up on top, if you want to send, in the K1 information pertaining to emailing things to the beneficiary, you can do so. After that, the information that I just shared on with the bullet points all follow: the worksheet for beneficiary share of distribution, the information about the estate or trust, the information about the beneficiary. Remember, this will be the first time you're actually stating who that particular individual is or entity is. And then the beneficiary share of current year income, deductions, credits, and other items. And of course, this will come directly from the information that the fiduciary is providing you with regard to the estate or trust. After that, you're going to complete the 8879, which is your e-file signature authorization for Form 1041. And then your final step, very much you'll recognize this if you've done 1040s before, and that is that you're going to go through your verification process, which we'll show you in just a moment, and then choosing on how you want to have it printed. If you want to print hard copies, of course, you'll print, then procure signatures. And if you want to go paperless, you'll procure the signatures, and then, of course, you'll print. And then that'll put things into your document archive. And please note that you can also use the document archive for relevant information or documents that you can either scan using one of our scanners, or not our scanners, but what's integrated into our program, or you can use your own desktop copier if it has scanning capabilities. Remember that you do need to print copies of the K1s for distribution to any one of your beneficiaries. So popping up real quick, we'll go back into the program for just a moment. And when we've put all the information in for a particular, on a particular return, in this case, the Hobart Green Estate, we start with a verification. Once it verifies clear, and by the way, if there are any things that need to be fixed on this, it's exactly the same point and click error resolution that you find in our 1040 program. Then you'll hit OK. You'll go up to your print for the print package itself. And of course, if you want to use remote signature capabilities, we have it. If you want to use the signature with a signature pad, or if you want to print, all of those are available to you just as they are with the 1040. Now, that really does take us from the beginning to the end in completing a 1041 as far as throughput is concerned. So what I'd like to do at this time is go ahead and then I'll turn it over to John.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. Very informative. As you saw on Steve's screen there, you'll see our social media links. Once again, we encourage you to follow us on those sites. For the main reason is we want to be able to communicate with you. We invite you to join the conversation with us in regards to tax law updates that are coming out real time. We'll share those with you. Important product updates, webinar reminders, and anything that may impact your business as we head into the tax season. So please, if you participate in any of those social media channels, please go ahead and follow us. In addition to the YouTube page, if you subscribe there as a reminder, you will receive notifications when we post new videos, such as posting today's webinar, which we'll have up by early next week. All right, with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.